Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. This is another paid request, this time from Corey. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting pretty much any type of videos, reviews, commentaries, reactions, video game stuff, whatever, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. PayPal is usually the best bet. So, what had happened was Corey had sent me a message on Facebook, and he said, "Hey, Matt, I want to send you something." Oh, that was cool. Oh, by the way, don't open it yet. Do a unpackaging video, and then when you do that, I'm going to send you a request to review it. I'm like, okay, that's very kind of him. And that was the Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares, the Robert Englund story documentary that came out. Which I think you can find these at your local Walmart. That's the other cover. Which is a 2-hour and 10-minute documentary on Robert Englund, who I've always enjoyed as an actor. Not just for Freddy Krueger, but for many other roles. I liked him in The Mangler, Adventures of Ford Fairlane, Wishmaster, Urban Legend, a lot of stuff. Now, before I get into the documentary, the features, to be honest, aren't much to run home about. You have Horror Icons, which is only 20 minutes long. That's the longest of the features. And it's pretty much just Tony Todd and Kane Hodder and Doug Bradley and Robert Englund. They're talking about, mainly it's the other guys, not so much Robert Englund, about, people view them as icons, and people like Adam Green and Eli Roth pretty much kind of blowing them for 20 minutes. And there's really nothing in terms of information or in terms of nuggets of, oh wow, that was cool. It's really just, let's pat ourselves on the back kind of thing that, I don't know, I don't think was really needed. Nightmare Cafe with Jack Coleman, that's about the TV show, so there's some interesting stuff on there. A conversation with the directors. I actually thought that was going to be about the directors who worked with Robert Englund, and they got like certain directors who worked with them, and no, this is the directors of the documentary. It was just, a couple minutes long about, we wanted to do this, and we didn't want to just talk about Nightmare on Elm Street, because there's documentaries like Never Sleep Again. Robert Englund Chatterbox is 4 minutes, pretty much people saying, yeah, he likes to talk a lot. I don't know, a couple minutes about Dance Macabre. That's the film where he's in drag, and it's pretty much talked with, I think it was one of the actresses who was in the film, and how nice it was working with Robert, and although I don't know if he could pass off a drag like he did in the film, which was this person here in red, and a trailer. So again, not much else. So if he did it for the documentary, not for the features. Now, for the documentary itself, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. I thought for the 2-hour and 10-minute running time, it went at a very fast pace. There's a lot of good nuggets of information in there. A lot of people interviewed, of course, Robert Englund, but you have Adam Green, because he worked with Robert on Hatchet. Eli Roth, because Eli produced 2001 Maniacs Remake, which Robert was in. I believe they interviewed the director 2001 Maniacs Remake. They interviewed some of the people involved with Behind the Mask, the rise of Leslie Vernon, which was cool to see that. They interviewed Tony Todd, Doug Bradley, Kane Hodder, Lance Henriksen, which was a nice surprise. I wish there was more stuff on him, or a feature about like how did Lance and Robert meet, and how does Lance know Robert Englund. He mentions a little bit, but I wish I could have heard a lot more. Just like, I don't remember them working on a project together, so like that was a cool surprise because I love Lance Henriksen. William Catt, which they worked together on some projects as well as the stage play. Dennis Christopher, because they worked on a film together. Of course, Dennis Christopher from the original Stephen King's It, and he was in Fade to Black. They talked with Robert's wife. They talked with Heather Langenkamp. Steve Johnson, which I wish there was more with him because he's usually a fun guy to interview. Like you see interviews with him, he's a pretty fun guy. So I wish those were more of the features, like Laundry Interview with Steve Johnson, Laundry Interview with Lance Henriksen. Sadly, it's not the case. Sorry for that. But yeah, it goes through Robert's story, and Corey wanted me to be a bit more in details. For those who haven't seen it, spoilers starting now. I would say if you're a fan of the guy, easily worth a look. Easily. Because they go through his life, his early films, some bits on Eaten Alive, Buster and Billy, which one of his first stuff he did, the TV show V, a little bit on Nightmare on Elm Street, but also bits on Adam Green talking about a bit of Hatchet, Behind the Mask, Galaxy of Terror, there's a little bit on that. Urban Legend, Wishmaster, etc. Like I said, my only nitpick, I wish there was certain stuff they got in or mentioned. The fact that there's a mention, but there's no talk on the adventures of Ford Fairlane. I think that's disappointing. I wasn't working with Andrew Dice Clay. I wasn't working with, the Rennie Harlan again, since he worked with on Elm Street 4. So the fact there's nothing on Ford Fairlane, I thought that was disappointing. The Mangler, I thought that could have been a little bit longer, talking about that film. I'm actually surprised there's not more on 976 Evil, since that's one of the films he directed. I mean, other than he met his wife on there, who was a set decorator. So it was more about that and less about the actual film. So, which was cool to hear about him and his wife, how they met. That part you could keep, but I wish there was a bit more about how was it worked out with Stephen Jeffries. What about the release of the film? What happened with? But it is what it is. So as I mean, there's some stuff I wish they could have delved a bit deeper into it. But overall, pretty tight, fast-paced package. So they go, spoilers, they go into how his father wanted him to be a lawyer, and as a kid he got into the theater, and I did like the story where there's these harem girls that play with his hair, and he's like, I saw one breast in one of my ears, another breast in another one of my ears. I like this. And like, he seems like a very nice guy. Robert Englund just seems like a very nice, down-to-earth guy who's very appreciative of what he has and what he's able to get out of life. And the chatbox actually works well because he's always got a story, doesn't flub a word, and that mixed in with all the other people they got involved with to be interviewed, and also there's a lot of footage of back in the day of talk shows or people cosplaying as Freddy from back in the 80s and a lot of other stuff. So it's definitely a nice, tightly edited package. That he was doing a play when he was 13 years old. He got a vote of confidence from Steve Allen, who was a big comedian at the time. William Catt, nice to see him. I remember him from the movie House, which I'm a fan of. He was on the TV show Great American Hero. It's about him and Robert talked about the stage and how they would go out and they would strip you. And sometimes you look over, it's like, oh, well, in this world today, I better not say that. But he's kind of making fun of that, so which I like. That I didn't just go too PC. And a lot of little nudges, like, I didn't know much about his first movie, Buster and Billy, and how he needed a toupee, so they gave him Alan Arkin's toupee. Or he was in a film with Burt Reynolds called Hustle, and how there was a bit where he shot a gun, but the person put too much of a load in it, so it moved Burt Reynolds' toupee. I thought that was a very funny story. And that Burt was actually cool, going, hey, it's not your fault, and hey, just, when you play this role, it's supposed to be this, yeah, make it memorable, because you're the guy that's confronting me, and if you're memorable, it helps my roll out. So that was nice of Bert to do. May you rest in peace. See, I've never seen the film Stay Hungry, so that's why I didn't know. Like, I remember, why is Arnold Schwarzenegger on here? People are like, oh, he was in the movie Stay Hungry. I'm like, oh, I never saw that film. So it was cool to see snippets of that, and oh, okay, you had thoughts on. He worked well with everybody there, and you had Jeff Bridges, and you had Arnold, and it would have been nice to hear a little bit more Arnold stories, but I did like the bit where we're going to help him out, and just this big muscular guy, and then you find out that he was a shrewd, good businessman. He actually owned all this stuff, and he had more money than us, and okay, he's going to do fine. Eaten Alive, they do mention the fact that he says the line, I'm Buck, and I'm raring to fuck, and that I guess apparently Tarantino actually, Robert Englund auditioned for the orderly in Kill Bill. Now, I think I misheard it, because I swear Robert Englund said that he got another part in Kill Bill, but I must have misheard that, because I don't remember him in Kill Bill. Oh, I got this pharmacist guy, and it's like, okay, I must have misheard it, because he's not, from what I remember, he's not in the film, unless I'm completely mistaken, but that was cool that he went up for the orderly. Should have gotten it. I don't know why he didn't. I think Tarantino made a mistake on that, but it is what it is. But they mention how the movie was finished without Toby Hooper, which heard a bit about that, but it's nice to hear a little bit more confirmation on that. It was also clear cut, cool, constituted cavalcade of stories. Me trying to sound smart and failing. Where there was stuff he auditioned with or close calls. It's always cool to hear about those type of stories because it's the what ifs. Like he went up for the John Travolta role in Carrie. Or he went up for a role in Apocalypse Now, but he was looked at as too young. Or he actually auditioned for Han Solo in Star Wars because they didn't know if he was going to be the cooler older brother or if he was going to be the same age as Luke. And he stole the sides for Luke and he gave it to this guy he knew called Mark Hamill. Or that he was, I guess, going to be in the film Crusade with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he was kind of bummed that went away and that never got made. Which I was bummed too. And that would have been cool. Like Robert Englund and a Paul Verhoeven film, Crusade, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That would have been cool to see. And definitely, Robert Englund, I'm sure, would have done a good job. I don't know, they mentioned he was going to be like Arnold's valet or something like that. I don't know how that would work, a valet in the Crusade era, but I don't know what it would have been. It would have been cool to see what it would have turned out. But they do talk about other films, lesser known films. Big Wednesday. William Catt talked about how Englund had a small role, but he was also the narrator, and how Robert really liked that film because that was part of his life, being a surfer. He grew up being a surfer, which I didn't even know that part. I worked with Christopher on Don't Cry, It's Only Thunder, which was a Vietnam movie, but it was on people who were kind of medics, showing a different side of Vietnam. An entertaining story where the two of them, him and Dennis Christopher, got arrested because Dennis Christopher had messed with the uniform, and that you're not supposed to do that, so uniform mutilation was an arrestable offense. Apparently Dennis Christopher had said, "You can't arrest us, we're actors." And then someone had to bail them out. He talks about the TV show V. And they have the guy, Kenneth Johnson, who worked on V. They also have the lady that was Robert's co-star in that. Sadly, no Mark Hamill. Would have been cool to have Mark. I mean, Mark Hamill. Well, Mark Hamill would have been cool to have the Star Wars story, but Mark Senior. Like, yeah, I'm surprised that Mark Hamill. He's such a. If he was friends with Robert Englund, to the fact they were roommates, I don't know why Mark Hamill wasn't interviewed. Do you think that'd be a hell of a story? Like, oh, Robert gave me the size for Luke Skywalker. I don't know. Maybe Mark Hamill was doing a movie. But yeah, it's kind of weird now I think about it. I mean, I screwed up. It's Mark Senior who's the V. So yeah, it's sad they didn't interview Mark Senior. But yeah, why did they not interview Mark Hamill? Because again, it seemed like him and Robert were friends, and I think maybe even like roommates at one point. But oh well. But yeah, it was here. It was cool to hear about Galaxy of Terror, and a moment where he met James Cameron. That James Cameron just kept writing, drawing, and throwing stuff away, and Robert Englund picked it up and go, "Wow, these drawings are good." But James Cameron was just focused on it, and he mentioned how Sid Haig was a sweetheart. So it was nice to hear. Rest in peace, Sid Haig. And they do mention Elm Street, but they don't regurgitate a lot of the same stories you hear over and over again. Pretty much like Elm Street 2, they mentioned how they got some other guy, and you could tell it wasn't him. They don't really mention much of Elm Street 3 or 4, except the guy who plays Danny, how he got Robert's autograph, and that Robert had said, hey, can't wait till I worked with you again. Then they did in part 5. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense why there's not a lot of that in there. They tell more about the impact of Freddy. And how Robert, was this character actor who could get any part, but now, because he's Freddy, it brought him international fanfare success, but now people only looked at him as the horror guy or as Freddy, and that's sort of catch-22 of all that. And pretty much how Robert Englund just came to a realization to accept it and go along with it. Which honestly was the right decision, because you could fight it, but I think fighting it sadly won't work. I forget who says it's nice to be remembered for one thing, because the worst thing for an actor is anonymity, to be completely forgotten, to not be to do all this stuff and then not be remembered. So if you don't be remembered, be remembered for at least one thing. And yeah, they talk about the Phantom of the Opera. They talk about the director of that, as well as the co-star, Jill Sholin. I can never pronounce her name. And she mentions how it didn't really know what audience wanted to be the movie. Did it want to be for gorehounds, or did it want to be for the Phantom of the Opera people? And I think she has a point. I actually think she has a good point on that, because I'm not a big fan of that movie. There's some films I'm surprised they didn't touch on, like Night Terrors. It's a bad movie. Don't get me wrong, it's a bad fucking movie, but that was, I think, with Toby Hooper, I think. And was the Marty Desaad? So I'm surprised there's no mention of that movie. 976 Evil, I'm surprised there was a bit more talk on how he got the job to direct. How did that come about in the job? Maybe if you get the 976 Evil Blu-ray, there's info on that, but I don't have that film, so oh well. But I think a bit more of that could have been put into it. Again, it's sad that there's no talk of Ford Fairlane. But yeah, you get into the 90s, and he tells about how like I said, they don't talk about Freddy's Dead. They don't really talk about Elm Street 5. They talk about Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which was cool, because I do like that film quite a bit. And him and Heather Langenkamp, there's interviews with them talk about, which again is cool, because I think that's definitely one of the better entries of that franchise. They talk about Wishmaster. It's nice to have Andrew Devoff interviewed, and how Robert gave him advice about the makeup, and hey, make sure to put in your contract that they gotta clean you, otherwise that stuff's gonna be in there for weeks. And Andrew Divoff just had a lot of respect for Robert, so that was nice to hear. Urban Legend, they talked a bit about that. Surprised they didn't get Michael Rosenbaum, because he did an interview with Robert on his podcast on YouTube, and he's a big fan of horror, so he seemed like a guy that would have been easy to get interviewed. I guess, they can only interview so many people. But yeah, they talk about Urban Legend, Wishmaster. The main one I wish was a little bit more, but there is at least there's an interview with Robert Englund on the main door Blu-ray, so at least there's that. So I could always look at that. To be fair, 2001 Maniacs, Tim Sullivan, the director. Behind the Mask: Rise of Leslie Vernon, which I like because I do like that film quite a bit. So it's like they talked with, I believe it was the director and the star, and the star. Oh, I got this comment by Robert who said, you remind me of a young Anthony Perkins, and it just touched the guy so much that, oh man, I'm ready to retire now. Which I just see I see what Robert means by that, and Lynn Shays also. Like I said, there's a lot of people interviewed, so it definitely goes at a good pace. Some of the later bits of the documentary is kind of like maybe it's just the subject matter that I'm not really when it dwindled down, it's kind of like either it's just films I didn't really care about hearing about or things of that nature. No, they don't talk about Python, although I kind of would have been curious about his thoughts on working on Python. But you just talk about how nice he is and how him and his wife, they worked very well together. They're a great couple. And just, going to the conventions, talking with the fans, how he, before I understand, treats them very well. And that he's just a really good guy, and that, he's not just a good horror actor, he's just a good actor. He's the Vincent Price of all of our times. Which I agree with that. So again, if you're a fan of the guy, it's well put together, it's very well edited. 2 hours and 10 minutes went by fast and quick. And there's been a lot of these documentaries coming out. I know there's one on Brad Dourif and his daughter, which I never saw. I think there's like Life with Chucky or something. There's the Pennywise, which I saw on YouTube. I don't have the Blu-ray, but I did see on YouTube. Someone had it uploaded for a little bit. I saw it. I didn't mind it for what it was. So I'm definitely a fan of these type of documentaries, and this is definitely one of the better ones in my opinion. Like I said, I have nitpicks here and there, but overall, very good effort. Like I said, if you're a fan of the guy and you want to know more about him, very good package of a documentary put together. So, with that said, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.